and welcome everyone to another episode of One by One. My name is Michael Kraus. One by One is devoted to highlighting extraordinary people, organizations, and movements working to create a more compassionate, peaceful, and interconnected world. Through conversations, ideas, science, art, and human experience, we explore how humanity can move from separation toward greater coherence. One person, one conversation, one action at a time. And today marks the beginning of a very special partnership between One by One and the Arctic Alliance as we begin an 8-part series leading toward a rare global event taking place on August 12th this year. On that day, a total solar eclipse will move across the Arctic and pass near the North Pole during an exceptionally rare celestial alignment, an event that only occurs roughly every 375 years. And at the same time, the Perseid meteor shower will illuminate the skies above the Earth. For many, this is simply a remarkable astronomical phenomenon, but for others it represents something more. A moment to pause, a moment to reflect, a moment to ask deeper questions about humanity's relationship with nature, consciousness, one another, and the future we are creating together. This series is about an opportunity. It is about responsibility. It is about possibility. And it is about exploring whether coherence within ourselves and collectively can help inspire a more harmonious future for life on Earth. Over the coming weeks, we will be speaking with scientists, artists, innovators, inventors, indigenous voices, musicians, researchers, and consciousness explorers from around the world, examining the intersection of neuroscience, ecology, electromagnetics, sound, human behavior, and collective intention. Today's episode is about opening this conversation, a mission overview, a call to action, and an invitation to participate in a global moment of stillness beneath the eclipse. And I could not imagine a more extraordinary group of guests to begin this journey with. First, we are joined by Mickaela Grace, founder of the Graceline Institute, earth activist, artivist, and educator in emotional intelligence and consciousness studies. For more than 2 decades, Mickaela has explored the intersections of neuroscience, somatics, sacred traditions, sound, human transformation, and environmental stewardship, working with teachers and elders across more than 34 traditions around the world. Her work invites people to reconnect with themselves, with the earth, and with the deeper intelligence that links us all together. We're also honored to welcome Dr. Stephen Young, a holistic physician, inventor, entrepreneur, and consciousness researcher who has spent more than 36 years exploring the relationship between mind, body, spirit, and the energetic systems that connect all life. Alongside stewarding multiple businesses and treating thousands of patients, Dr. Young has led missions to sacred sites around the world, focused on healing, coherence, and what he describes as the emergence of heaven on earth. And joining us as well is Dr. Larry Farwell, Harvard-educated neuroscientist, inventor, and pioneering researcher in brainwave science and consciousness studies. Dr. Farwell was named by Time magazine as one of the top innovators of the century and is internationally known for groundbreaking work in neuroscience, quantum physics, brain-computer interfaces, and the science of human consciousness. His research and discoveries continue to challenge conventional understanding of the mind and our relationship to reality itself. He's also the author of the #1 best-selling book, The Science of Creating Miracles. To all three of you, welcome to the program, and I'm so excited to be starting this episode series with our first gathering. Welcome to the program.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And so, Mickaela, maybe I can start with you, and perhaps the best place maybe to begin is why the North Pole and why now?
Yes. Well, these are two of my favorite thinkers on the planet, so happy to be here with Dr. Larry and Dr. Stephen. And Stephen and I often just get we get summoned to these sweet places around the world to be of service to the Earth's prana. And so I had dreamt about this particular trip, and because I make temple technology that induces altered states all naturally to just bring people back into resonance after they've experienced any distortion in the field around the body. I had a dream that essentially a particular scientific team was meant to go educate and be together in Greenland, in Iceland and Greenland around this time. And so I was lucky enough to, during another eclipse, I missed 8 flights in a row, and on the 9th flight I was seated next to, with great synchronicity, to John Englander, who is the world's leading expert on sea level rise, and we built a very deep friendship. So in the dream that I had, I thought that it was really about being with him to film glaciers melting and get people to really care and open their hearts to understanding the global impact and the way that we need to unify on the subject of sea level rise, and to really prepare in a non-fear-based way for what is to come. But the dream took me a little bit deeper in understanding that right after that, our smaller team, what we call the Temple Tech team, needed to get to the North Pole. And the North Pole at this particular alignment, so when eclipses happen, really everything in life is about the sound, shape, and spin that you put upon data, right? So you can look at an eclipse in the sky and say it's obstruction, and something is dark, and something is blocking another thing, and you could tell that story. Or you could easily find that there's a really science-based moment, a precious moment there of deep alignment. And so we know that there's electromagnetic anomaly, and there's all this change in the atmosphere, and a quieting or a deep, heartfelt, still point pause that happens during most eclipses. But the really special things going on with why now and why this eclipse and why this team is that, again, as you stated in kind of the premise that we wrote together as a team, is this is a super special solar eclipse. So the path of totality happening right at the North Pole will only happen about every 375 years. But mixed with that, we have this unique Perseid meteor shower, and then we have basically the perspective that the moon's umbra is moving basically counterclockwise rather than clockwise. So if we really look at the physics of it, which my homie Dr. Larry is going to talk about, when we look at the magic of unbinding and unwinding ourselves to story, to memory, to time, to language, to ideas and notions of trauma or locked paralysis, or when something goes from wave to particle and we get kind of calcified or stuck in a moment. There's a lot of systems on the planet that are lacking harmony, and rather than focus on things being dissonant or broken, it's an opportunity for resonance. And so the greater mission in this global meditation, and why we want to really focus on the Earth's polarity right at this moment, is when the eclipse happens, we have this window of time where the ionosphere of the Earth goes a little bit more quiet. And so similar to someone who goes into cardiac arrest, where there's a moment of pause with the metronome of the heart, we can do defibrillation, and we can jumpstart that heart with a new waveform, with a new beat. Well, it happens to be that we have some tsunamis going on under the Earth's surface, and we've got, a lack of polarity, or as the Inuit elders will explain and scientists will explain, we're sort of off from the Earth's North Pole or compass. Our compass is a little wonky right now, which great scientists will teach us about over the course of these 8 episodes. And so we have this opportunity to really use consciousness to see if we can change a vector, change an outcome, create alignment. And so what we want to do is really focus on the Earth having stronger polarity, and we want to calm some of these tsunamis, and we want to use human consciousness in a great way of like murmuration and unification. We want to use this alignment to really jumpstart something new. And a happy side effect is that my team will be recording these anomalies and recording these harmonies for biophotonic, cymatic, and somatic technologies that will help the human nervous system come back into regulation as well. That was so many words and a boatload of information, but that's why we're excited about this particular eclipse.
Wow, and what I really hear from you, that this is a once in a lifetime opportunity, or maybe
Yes.
once in a 4 life or 5 lifetimes
Well, if we
opportunity.
add all these special things happening, like once in 900, 1,000 years, these particular little things occur. And so in our lifetimes, this is truly a once in a lifetime opportunity to be of service.
Beautiful. You were talking about the moon's umbra. Did I hear that correctly? And
Yeah.
for anybody that doesn't know what it is, including myself, would you be able to explain what that word means and what it actually is?
Yeah, well, and we might want to turn this over to Dr. Larry too, but essentially, when we have the relationship, which is a trinity relationship between the earth and the moon and the sun, when we have those things really line up, we have almost this idea of shadow, which we could tell a story about, so light being blocked by a shadow. But usually we have this understanding of proper movement in the sense that we think of like a clock should always go clockwise, it should go this way, right? And we think water should spin this way. Well, if you think about the us being in one hemisphere versus another, water naturally wants to spiral in a different direction. So from the perspective of being at the North Pole, which is a super unique, important nodal point for the Earth, we will actually see this change, like most people will experience an eclipse from moving basically east to west, and west to east is unique. So we're really looking at the movement of the moon, right, as being something that will be perceived to the human eye as being counterclockwise, or this opportunity for unwinding, unbinding. So across many traditions, we sometimes will walk hundreds of miles in pilgrimage, for example, to go to a sacred site or a holy site. And a part of many traditions is to walk counterclockwise when getting there. And it's this idea that we can sort of unwind who and what we were to mark the ending of one thing and a new beginning or a fresh start of something new. So it's kind of a death and rebirth process when we play with this idea of, really moving rather than the normal sensation of a clock moving this way, moving counterclockwise, or our idea of the east is where the sun rises and the sun sets in the west. We have this opportunity where it will be perceived as being opposite, and opposites are not scary. Contrast is not scary. It just gives an opportunity for new perspective, new perception. So it's just a unique pathway, and the human eye is changed, but we actually have really cool evidence to know that people go through an anatomical or a sensorial change, an electrical change in the system when they're around that much resonance. And I would love to kick that idea over to Dr. Larry, because resonant fields and the magic of resonance fields are such a cool and unique specialty of his. So,
Right. Well, I'd like to geek out. Thank you, Mickaela, for that brilliant
yeah.
analysis of what's actually going on here. To begin with, I'd like to address one question and the other from the scientific perspective, and that is, I think we'd all agree that it would take a miracle to create peace and harmony in the world. And one question that arises is, well, are miracles possible? Are we all just wishful thinking here, or does science back what we're creating? So I was sitting with my dad in a restaurant. My dad was Dr. George Farwell, one of the scientists who invented the atomic bomb on the Manhattan Project. And so I said, "Hey, Dad, anything is possible." And he said, "Yes, son, any imaginable configuration of quantum particle wave phenomena is possible. I mean, the whole universe is simply quantum particle wave phenomena, and some are probable, some are improbable, some are extremely improbable, but anything is possible." I said, okay, so it's possible that all of the elementary particles that make up my body and yours, plus enough air to breathe, are going to tunnel to the other side of the moon, and we'll carry on this conversation on the other side of the moon. And he thought for a minute, and he said, well, yeah, that is possible. And in fact, we were in a restaurant. He got out a paper napkin and he wrote down a formula and he calculated the approximate probability that that was going to happen. Now, spoiler alert, it was actually low probability. It didn't happen. He carried on the conversation there in the restaurant. But actually, my first take-home message is that impossible sounding miracles are possible. Anything in the quantum mechanical world is possible. And I'll go a little bit later into how we can create miracles, the science of creating miracles, and also I'll geek out a little later on the structure of creation and how it makes that possible. And we'll get into very much what Mickaela talked about, which is the resonances, the harmonics, the vibratory synchronicities that take place in the world and how our consciousness influences those. And that's something we explore in the scientific laboratory as well. But my first take-home message is miracles are possible, and if we're creating a miracle here, it's a scientific phenomenon, not just something we hope is true, but something that we actually have scientific backing for.
Everything is a miracle, isn't it? And so I want to turn it over to Stephen Young and get your perspective on the event and this once in a lifetime opportunity and what it means for you.
Yeah, I just always have to laugh that I get these instructions for these missions. All the missions I've ever done since 2021 wasn't coming from like, what do I want to do? What does the world need? I just get these instructions. And so, and they typically come when I'm with water and water's moving. So it's either washing dishes, showering, or peeing. And so this came when I was washing dishes, and I was just given this information of like being where the totality is on August 12th for the eclipse. And so that got my sort of instructions. And then doing conversation with Mickaela, that came up maybe like 3 days after I had those instructions, and everything just started to fall into place, And then yeah, and for me, the meaning is I think we all have the innate capability to create any reality that we want, And so yes, we're going to go to this incredible spot at this incredible date, an incredible moment. But I think it's helpful to contextualize all of that, and that's still a practice ground of what we're all able to do, which is to create all of reality. And so that's what's exciting for me.
Well, in the exploration of the podcast and the theme really around this global meditation. And also together with John Englander, I know that part of really the goal is to perhaps explore how our unified field and the rise of the sea levels is interconnected. And can you maybe speak a little bit into that? Because from my experience, simply being a witness of whatever is going on with Mother Earth and nature over the last 10 or 20 years, I always believed that the storms and the tornadoes and the earthquakes and some of the fires are a reflection of our state of consciousness, and it's Earth's reflection of our fear and our anxiety. And I'm always thinking, well, can't we all come together and shift ourselves out of that and be in assistance to Mother Earth, if that is even possible, and if I expressed that correctly? So can you speak into that?
Sure. Yeah, I'm a huge fan of these 7 Hermetic principles, and of the 7, I always say my favorite one is law of correspondence, also known as above, so below, as within, so throughout. And that law simply states that how the universe, Mother Earth, and our physiology and our psychology works, it's all one. It's all one unified thing, that we have different boxes, of understanding to speak about. And so I fully do believe that what's happening to Mother Earth is simply a metaphorical representation of what's happening with humanity. And that the biggest change that we can ever do, because I would say, if you want to be helpful and live a life of incredible meaning and fulfillment and even enlightenment, you don't have to do meditations or read any books. Just do the opposite of what mass media has programmed us to do, because everything's been inverted, right? And so we've been told, actions speak louder than words, but we do know through esoterics that our words, right, the meaning that we give things, collapses energy into physical reality, much more so than our physical actions. And so this is where we really get to realize that this entire game of life is like a infinite mirror of gnosis, of knowing ourselves deeply, so that the reflections are in a perfect feedback loop, basically. Because we have language like the universe or earth or human, but it's all really one thing. And I think when we come from that perspective, we can make massive changes as we change our internal state, internal language, internal knowing, and that will reflect in the external world.
Yeah, I personally probably know of a handful of people that were able to either redirect a tornado, stop a fire, make the rain stop, and even cause an earthquake. Actually, it was 8 years old at the time, the son of my former partner, and we had a mild earthquake here in Vancouver. And a few days after the earthquake, I wasn't in the car, but I was told that story. He was asking his mother. He said, "Mom, can I tell you something? But please don't get mad at me." And she said, "Yeah, just go ahead." He said, "Please, please, please don't get mad at me." And she said, "No, I promise I won't get mad at you." And he said, "Remember that earthquake that happened a few days ago?" And she said, "Yes." And he said, "I caused it. I created it." And I witnessed him with his 8 years old making the sun come out when we needed it. And he wouldn't do it on command. It would have to come from within himself, that he wanted to create it, and then he literally shifted the weather. So I can imagine that if one person can do it, how we can shift our collective human experience if we all come together with one shared purpose and one shared focus. And how are we going to do that?
Well, I would love to jump in and add to it a little bit, since Stephen and I and Dr. Larry, our bodies of work will sort of merge together as we're with different communities, and we have sort of modern ways of viewing hermetic principles. So like at Graceland, we'll say, "What I seed, and what I seed, I see." So you gave a broad example of, a kiddo who's still really connected to the field. So he can perceive and experience that he is impacting weather, right? But most of us have more of like an internal realization or reality-based notion that like our name is real and my body is real and we're boxed into identity. And so when we go into autonomic response and we go into like flight, fight, freeze, or appease, whatever we're bracing for impact from, right? This idea that we're holding a notion, an experience of something that has occurred before and wanting it not to occur, it's really moving in terms of the unified field like a vortex or a vacuum, where we're playing with space-time and we're actually drawing to us magnetically what we expect. And so this idea that human consciousness is dancing in the field. And so as we were talking about water and we're talking about the unified field and how is sea level rise linked to human consciousness, which Dr. Larry will jump in and talk about, everything that you could ever need to understand about unified field theory is really easy to understand if we talk about water. So if I tell a story about water, like we see that water is unified, it's not afraid of dark recesses, it doesn't tell a story about darkness. It can be in a cloud, it can be in your sweat, it can be on a tear. And so think about all the molecules of a river. They look unified, they're moving all together. But what if one little drop of water splashes out from the river and lands on a rock? And that little molecule thinks that his name is Hugo, and he's real. And he tells the story that, like, I'm apart from the river, I'm totally separate, I'm alone, right? And he's existing in this isolated reality. But what we understand or perceive about water is that he will never always be alone. He's connected to a whole, right? And so he will eventually go into the soil and feed a plant and go deep, deep, deep into cracks or recesses and eventually be brought back into the unified system or back into all the waters. And so human consciousness, in lots of ways that we can perceive it, is in the same way that you have 100 trillion cells in your body and they're not actually competing or fighting or creating war. Like your liver cells are not mad at your skin cells. They're all actually in their zone of genius doing what they're meant to be doing to keep the whole going forward. So each human being is a sliver of consciousness, and we actually are like one cell in a wider organism that's actually a unified organism that is wanting and aiming to move forward. So when you get a lot of those cells collaborating toward one mission, you see an immediate change, what we seed, right? I'm planting a seed, and because I'm a part of the whole tree of life, I plant a seed of what I expect to see, hunt for evidence. Based on confirmation bias, I tend to find what I'm looking for, but also we're actually manipulating space-time fabric, and we're playing in a field that is basically like an educational simulation where we can create whatever reality we want. So an easier way to even understand that is if you think of being in a chorus. I was in 8th grade chorus and I was loud and I'm singing strong and wrong, but I'm louder than everyone. So I'm singing off note or off key. And so it's really messing with everyone else's ability to stay in harmony. And so that is a frequency that's loud that everyone will start to also sing off key to. So when we have all these systems that aren't collaborating and we've got these systems that have distortion, sometimes we're doing a lot of things that are in discord, right, with Mother Earth's natural rhythms and systems. And we have the ability just with consciousness alone, which is very well documented and proven to, for example, clean up pollution in waterways and things like that. So when we all focus on this same thing and we're singing the same harmony and seeing the same shape or outcome of a geometry, and then we're really putting it into motion, putting it into spin, we're much more powerful than we think. And so we are the waters is really what we're coming down to. What we do to the waters, we do to ourselves, because we're 71% water. You put in yellow food dye number 5 into water, you put in glyphosate or Roundup or toxins, chemicals into the oceans, our medicines that we throw down the toilet, right? Everything that we're putting into the waters, we're putting into ourselves. So when you say, how can this happen? That we might be able to have an effect on the trajectory of an asteroid or the polarity of the Earth. It happens when we put focused attention on it, because we are actually the waters. And then I'm going to hand the mic to Dr. Larry to say that in a much more beautiful scientific way.
Thank you. Yeah, Mickaela and Stephen have both expounded very brilliantly on the reality that we have here in our universe. I would like to approach that from a totally, really concrete, scientific way. And I'm going to geek out for just a minute here, bear with me, on the structure of the universe. Okay, so I have this table in front of me. You might be able to hear me knocking on it. Appears to me to be solid and brown. And it certainly appears to be different and separate from the air around it, from my body, from the boat that I'm in, from the ocean that's out there outside my boat. Pretty separate and distinct. But let's look at this table more scientifically, okay? Not more woo-woo, more scientific. If we look within this solid brown object, it's not at all solid. If we look more scientifically, you'll see molecules are moving around quite quickly, mostly empty space and a lot of molecules in there. Look within the molecules, we see again mostly empty space, we see atoms. We look within the atoms, we see really a very, very, very high percentage of empty space and elementary particles, protons, neutrons, electrons. We look within those, we see quarks. we go beyond the quarks to the field level, to the more fundamental level, to the string theory level, if you want to go into the mathematics of physics in it, what we see is simply vibrating strings. Now, so this looks like a table if you look at the surface, but if you look more deeply, if you look more, I'm saying more scientifically, it's actually a pattern of vibrations. Now, what's vibrating? Well, Einstein coined the term unified field to describe that universal field, which is analogous to water, that universal field that vibrates into the quantum particle wave phenomenon that we experience as the physical universe and looks so separate. But that's an illusion. The reality is that we have this one oceanic unified field that vibrates into what we experience as the separate parts of the physical universe. And then the question arises, well, okay, if that's the case, it stands to reason, as all the great spiritual teachers have said, that have taught us, that the essential constituent of the universe and the essential constituent of me, the I, the self, the subject, is the same thing. And that turns out to be a reality that we can test. If it's the case that that conscious unified field is the same as myself and it's the same as the universe, it stands to reason we could create a resonance on the level of our consciousness, individually and collectively, which would then show up in the universe. And that's really what all the ancient scriptures have said, and all the success books, many of them just written last week, will say you create a resonance on the level of your consciousness that moves nature in that, and then it shows up. It's like you pluck a guitar string and it sets up a resonance. Other instruments in the environment pick up on that resonance, and then you have them all vibrating in harmony. So my dad and I decided to see if we could test this in the scientific lab. Being scientists, we thought, okay, that makes sense. Let's see if we can test it. Let's make this a hypothesis that we can create order, we can influence the probability distribution of quantum mechanical events and create order where there has been chaos. So I think everyone's had an experience, and in fact, Michael described a few of them. We've all had experiences that seem miraculous, like, oh, I'd really like to hear from Mickaela, and just then the phone rings, Mickaela. But we've had that experience, and we don't know the probability that would have happened anyway. So you can't say, okay, that's a scientific experiment. We do know the probability of alpha particle emission by plutonium. We know that very precisely, the whole probability distribution. And plutonium is one of the major ingredients of an atomic bomb. My dad was one of the guys who developed the atomic bomb. So we had some plutonium. So we took this plutonium and we decided to measure it in the physics lab and see if we could shift that probability distribution. And I could go into all the math and all of that and the physics apparatus we used to measure it. But bottom line is we found that we could, especially people who were of a highly developed level of consciousness, could create an extremely improbable event in the quantum mechanical world, could shift what otherwise would be a random process into a more harmonious resonance, using consciousness alone without any physical intervention. And again, that we showed that, we proved that and published in physics journals, in using standard physics apparatus for measuring the phenomenon. So that's the second thought that I had today. And that is that not only is anything is possible, miracles are possible, but we can create miracles from the level of our consciousness, functioning from that level where we are all one, setting up a resonance there, creating harmony where there has been disresonance or disharmony. So the bottom line from the scientific perspective is all of the things that all three of you have brilliantly expressed in experiential terms and in principle is backed by scientific research that shows, yes, that's a real phenomenon. So can we create, it would take a miracle to generate harmony in the human beings on the earth, in the natural events that are taking place, in the electromagnetic phenomena. Yeah, and we can create that miracle from the level of consciousness, and that's what this event is all about. This is a scientific event.
Well, I don't know many people that have plutonium hanging around at home, so congratulations to that. I'm not saying you have it hanging at home, but that are able to access it. Dr. Stephen, how do you it sounds great through science and the scientific and physics principles, but how do we actually, what do we need to do inside each and one of us to actually make the probability of that miracle to create greater coherence around the planet and come into greater connection with the earth? What do we need to do in order to actually do it? Because even with meditation, I mean, we all advocate for meditation, but who has the capacity to be still for 30 seconds or even a minute in their brain if we are completely I'm not saying confused, but bombarded with outside stimuli and the reality of life. So how do you see we can increase the probability that Dr. Leary was talking about to be successful in creating that shift?
Yeah, I would say we get to appreciate contrast. And so you can imagine there might be many listeners that are hearing this and saying, wow, yeah, I'm so distracted. I'm on my phone, I'm watching movies, I'm allowing sort of media to literally siphon my attention. And that's awful. I need to meditate. I need to quiet my mind more. But the thing is, the meditation becomes yet another task, right? To try to fix something. And so what if we appreciated that, oh, yeah, I've literally have had my attention siphoned so that I know what having deep attention within feels like, because you can't appreciate hot without cold. And so what I'm getting at is, first and foremost, is appreciating all the distractions and all the busyness and all the non-mindful moments of our lives, because that contrast then gives us the appreciation and embodiment of the opposite, which is the stillness and the knowing. Whereas most of the mass media approach would be there's some problem to fix. And I'm a huge fan of no, we just recognize everything has been divinely orchestrated and we just look for the value of what was and we get value going forward. Versus if we look at a problem of what was, we just get more problems going forward. So that way, my suggestion is just completely recontextualize what's happening and know that all the moments of distraction and non-mindfulness is perfect. Great. You know what that feels like. Now you have a better understanding of the opposite of that. And now let's lean in towards that.
I would add to that too that we utilize creativity and really utilize, as Stephen says, like the ability to see the whole picture and take wide views. So if you're able to see contrast, to get out of dualism, to accept that, wow, everything is happening for a reason, and I can really like bring my conscious awareness to accepting both sides and having like there be a coherence of meaning in the middle. But in terms of preparing for an event like this, we have this opportunity to say, well, we wouldn't run a marathon without getting into shape, right? Without sort of training for something, but rather than, and Stephen says this actually so beautifully, rather than thinking, I'm not there yet, this is hard, I'm so easily distracted, sitting still or meditating seems hard, rather than looking at all the ways that something won't work. Really, at the end of the day, and again, I see the whole world through kind of the lens of emotional intelligence, but at the end of the day, it's a refinement of who we're being and not constantly chasing a different sensation or a different idea out there, right? So like, I'm too distracted, I should be different out there, I should be more focused. And we kind of like are always forcing ourselves to chase after a thing that we think we don't have. And so when I talk about training, people might pass it through that lens of like, oh, we're training for a marathon or we're training for this event, when actually it's about understanding that we can just drop into self and all of the answers and all of the abilities are sort of already there. That unification or that sensation of what does it feel like to love? Will you know how to love? We can't see it under a microscope, but if I said to you, prove to me that you love your daughter, right? It's not a thing that can be seen, but you can access at any moment that sensation or that feeling of it. And so I think when it comes to even doing group meditations or group healing, we can have this idea of I need to heal something because I'm not healed already. So then we're running after a thing that isn't, right? And so the I think the more interesting or more curious question about a group event or a world healing event is sometimes people approach the event by their own lack or their own smallness or their own identity, to say, I'm going to ride off of the wave of, while I'm meditating, I'll let my mind be distracted into like, I really want a new car, and I really want to look healthier, and I really want a promotion, or I want a different job. And so they'll almost accidentally turn the experience into an extractive experience where they're desperately grabbing at a thing they think they don't have already for themselves. And what we're asking or inviting everyone to do, and for a great example is even how this event came together. I might have seen it in a dream or felt it in a dream, but nothing is about me, and every single one of us might be dreaming the same dream. And so the moment that I got playful and planted the seed of going to Greenland, going to Iceland, getting to the North Pole, suddenly all of these little tuning fork moments of synchronicity happened where my friends are dreaming the same dream. Scientists, artists, thinkers, technology experts, a satellite broadcaster suddenly just lands, all together within a few days. So that's an example of that. And so rather than us thinking during this moment, we're going to grab something, heal something, go do something, there's a really beautiful coherence that naturally happens when we surrender. And if we're so focused on just, rather than the question, as A Course in Miracles would say, rather than giving to get, what if we're just giving to give? What if we're so dialed, and it's 90 seconds of this totality, right? This 90 seconds where this full eclipse happens is not that long of an ask, but what if we're giving so much love back to the mother, so much love back to earth, and we're just visualizing the same thing all at the same time? Because usually in a more confused state, often, not, I shouldn't say usually, but sometimes in even a group meditation or thousands of people meditating all together, did we train like athletes, like emotional athletes, to know what should I be visualizing? What should I be doing? What should I be thinking? Or did we easily just go into habit and distraction? But what if we all have a really clear map, which is why we're doing these 8 episodes up to the event, and we're not trying to drive an agenda or get to a place or push hard. We're just lovingly surrendering into a very simple and sophisticated same visualization or same frequency or same tone that's really simple, like loving the magnetic alignment of the earth. And so it's not a big doing, like a big construct of chasing a thing that's broken or fixing a thing. It's really surrendering into the feeling of one coherent vision where we're all putting our conscious eye, what we see, we seed. Maybe we're just going to get really playful and go hang out together. Like, let's get the band back together and make music. Let's have the music be this one thing that we want to see. And let's get really great science and data on it and play and see if it's possible. And we have no idea what's going to happen when we get all these folks to meditate at the same moment for the same clear image. And then that simplifies all of the distraction and the noise, and what if I'm getting this right or wrong, or what if my mind wanders and I go think about a car I want to buy. So I guess what I would say is it's more a simple and playful preparation that isn't about doing. It's about having sort of like really cool folks come together who are saying, let's do this experiment together, and you already have everything you need to do it. Let's just see. Like, let's just go see. And so we're really just playing with the eye, in my opinion. Like our eyes and our hearts all focused on the same thing.
I find it fascinating. And within the fascination is also this unique opportunity. And when I was reading through your documentation of the event, what I got is that there was this unique opportunity within, I believe it's 1 minute and 44 seconds to literally, correct me if I'm wrong, if that is the duration, to literally drop a new level of information into the energetic field of Mother Earth and re-inform her that we perhaps what you call your dream and Dr. Larry dreams and Stephen Young's dream is all of our dreams. And I believe that we all came here in pursuit of love and happiness and peace and coherence, and I believe that this is a universal dream. And so in order to get there, this is where I want to repeat what you had said, is the athleticism, and I think you called it emotional athleticism. And what do we need to know about the event? How can we prepare ourselves? And what do we need to know about the science and the practical application of it? And this is what really fascinated me around this 8-week podcast, where we can individually and collectively come together to explore an extraordinary possibility for humanity. And I'm not saying that lightly. Because at events like this in the past, if we look maybe 500 or 1,000 or 2,000 years ago, the whole population would participate in an eclipse or in a astronomical event. Is that the right astronomical event like this? There was no doubt. You showed up, you participated, and not because you had to, but because you recognized the magnitude and the importance of what it actually was. And so I believe we've kind of lost our connection to time a little bit, not a little bit, a lot actually, and to the greater cosmic rhythms of the universe. So how do we relate that back to the rising ocean levels? Whoever wants to speak about that.
I'm going to jump in and answer the first part, because there were like 12 juicy questions in there. And then I'm going to kick it over to these two guys. But just to answer the logistics question, so yes, we have this short window, this like minute and 44 seconds, where I want you to think about like Star Trek, where it's like shields up. When the shields are up, like a missile can, hit the craft and bounce away, because we have high ionic structure, high voltage, shields are up, right? And so if you think about like getting behind the cPanel of a website, or the firewall is down, we have all these ideas of protection, and we don't need to use like the right versus wrong or like attack or invasion protection idea. It's just, let's just think about it as electricity, right? And so when we want to make a change with electricity, we usually turn the electricity in the house off, and then we make a little change and we turn it back on. So at this really pivotal time, the Earth's shield goes down. And so if we wanted to be really loving and just make a musical change, right? Because the Earth has this metronome. And if you think about what's happening when with a riptide, where you see two currents and they're banging into each other, and that might look violent to the human eye, of this disorganization of really dangerous tides banging. Well, there's a standing wave happening with tsunamis under the surface, for example. We could literally soften that. And, the Earth is very strong. She doesn't necessarily need our help. I think that she's got her systems in rhythms and on a long calendar cycle. I think even if human beings weren't on the planet, we would be going through, when we go through the precession of the equinoxes and there's more photon availability in the sky, we have all these consciousness changes. We have these, large floods or large events that happen on kind of a rhythmic cycle. But this is the opportunity with her, I think, to just show some love and support and play some music that sort of can reset that metronome, so that we're all singing a different song, because the shields go down and we can sort of change the radio station or drop in a lot of love, and then turn the system back on and be running a little bit of a new operating piece of software. So it's just a chance to really make a difference in that metronomic wave. and to see how we can unify, and as many of us as possible also just giving back and showing a lot of love. And maybe love itself will be the thing that makes the poles have a little bit more strength, more polarity, more electricity. We lost your audio, Michael.
You lost my audio. What I'd wanted to do also is to highlight ways as to how people can get involved. And so there's, I believe, 3 different ways how people can get involved in this project right now. There is the GoFundMe campaign that you had put up, and you can become a supporter and donate to the vision. You can be a participant and join the global meditation event on August 12th. And you can also become an amplifier and share this with friends and families. And so we've put a link either into the comment section above or below, or in the description section above and below, for you to really become engaged in this project. And again, I feel that there is this sense of, I don't want to call it urgency, because that would come from a place of fear, and I don't want to go there. I come from a place of opportunity and what we can co-create, and what could that look like once we've gone through this portal, and once we've shifted the frequency, perhaps, if I can say that way, on the planet. What does that look like for each and one of us, and is that also an important piece of the visualization of what is the reality then going to be? And Dr. Stephen, if you want to maybe jump into that question.
Yeah, what was coming to me as you were speaking was, there's this incredible opportunity to sort of be in the moment of like miracle magnification, right? That's what sort of that moment is. And what a beautiful moment for all of humanity to kind of lean into their own practice of creating miracles, not only for themselves, but for the rest of all of existence. And so, yeah, that might be a really helpful point for everyone to kind of come from. And I want to also mention that, of course, anyone can do all 3. It's not either A, B, or C. You can be an amplifier and a supporter, and we can do all 3. And what we're looking for is just, people who get this, like who can feel this sort of transmission and feel this incredible opportunity to participate in something that is exceptional. We all get to cherish our exceptional moments in our lives, and this is going to be one of them for sure.
I'd like to make a comment about several other things. Mickaela is talking about training. Now, if you're training doing push-ups, you push harder, you build more muscles, as Stephen well knows. And however, what this phenomenon is that we're creating, it's not a phenomenon of doing, it's a phenomenon of being. It's a phenomenon of resonating and radiating. And you get that, you reach that state of quietness by letting go. It's like if you're falling in love with somebody, you think, okay, I got to make sure to fall in love, really love. The harder you push, the more you're actually distancing from who you truly are. So when we talk about coming together and creating this influence, it's an effortless process. It's a process of letting go of everything and simply being who we are, resonating who we are. I mean, it's like falling in love with each other and Mother Earth. It's easy, it's effortless, and it's delightful. It's not hard work. But yes, we can train, but we train by having a delightful experience. And in the time, in that minute and a half, what we're doing is sharing a delightful experience. We don't have to push. We can simply let go and enjoy and fall in love.
Dr. Larry, can you talk about the magic of when even 10,000 people come together in love or focus, like what happens when even 10,000 people focus on one thing?
Okay.
Can I just intersect there for a second and just from my personal experience as to how easy it was to fall in love with this project and to fall in love with all three of you. There was no effort. There was nothing was needed. It was just allowing it to happen and being open. And so, back to you, Dr. Leary. Sorry for the interruption here. I just wanted to share that.
Thank you. That was a delightful interjection. All right, as I like to do, let's go back to the science of it. Let's say you have a light bulb and it's radiating a certain number of photons. Now, the power of that light that's coming out will be proportional to the number of photons. However, if you take that same number of photons and you create a situation where the photons are moving in coherence with each other, same number of photons, moving in coherence, it doesn't just create random light, it creates a laser. And with a relatively small amount of initial power input, you can create a laser that'll cut through steel, cut through diamonds, shine from here to the moon. The difference is in the coherence. The same things happens in consciousness. If we're coherent in our consciousness, we're resonating the same resonance, it takes on this powerful laser quality and can have a huge impact. Even as few as a few people or even a few thousand people can have a greater influence of coherence than all the incoherence that's out there in the rest of the world. And that's the science of it.
Well, I believe that within the unified field theory, scientists are talking about the tipping point as well. And from your experience or from your calculation or from your wisdom or knowledge, where do you think the tipping point is? Some people say it's the square root of 1%. Some people put a percentage point towards it, like anywhere between 16 and 18% based on Roger Everett's diffusion of innovation model, and speaking about the Maharishi effect or the 100th monkey effect. Where do you think is it about a quantity, or is it about a quality of the participants that then exponentially have an effect on the quantity, if that makes even sense as a non-scientist?
Well, it is about both quantity and quality. I mean, we can go into some of the numbers. There was a test based on the Transcendental Meditation Program, Maharishi Mahesh Yogi, where they found that in cities where 1% of the people were practicing this technique of transcending and reaching a conscious unified field, it would start to impact the society as a whole. The crime rate would go down and so on. So however, if you have this laser effect, if you have this coherence effect, it can be the square root of 1%. So actually, I was a participant in this. We got together the square root of 1% of the population and all got together in Washington, D.C. And what was unusual about this, or rather unique, is that the scientists involved made predictions in advance. They didn't say, okay, this happened, and then look back and say, okay, we did something good. They made predictions in advance that the crime rate would go down, the accident rate would go down, and so on. And that actually happened. So if we want to talk numbers, we can talk something like square root of 1%. However, in my view, even as a scientist, of course, I like numbers and I like mathematical equations and working things out mathematically. But what we're really talking about is the quality of the resonance. If we have a high enough quality of resonance, a high enough integration among all of us, the numbers, the specific numbers are not so important. What's important is the resonance that we're creating and the depth of our experience on which we're creating that resonance, the level of effortness, the level of falling in love, the level of opening to this infinite unity that we all are. And that we can create a shift in the collective consciousness of the world. We can create a shift in the electromagnetics and the dynamics of how the Earth is interacting. So quality and quantity are both important. What's critical is the depth of our experience and the unity, as Mickaela and Dr. Stephen have been pointing out, the unity of our resonance, that we're all resonating together, so we get this laser effect.
And most and foremost, participation. That's where it all starts.
Yeah.
Now, what
I would say to just add to that so quickly, because Dr. Larry loves numbers and I love music, and we both love numbers and music together. But when you look at all of this as just, what if we treat it like a concert and a light show to never be repeated twice, which I think every human being is a concert and a light show, never to be repeated twice. So when you go to a concert and you're all like enjoying the same piece of music and enjoying each other, you almost always will describe it using language about electricity. You could feel it in the air, right? So that idea that we can have a cymatic change, the shape of sound, right? An electrical change, a worldly change in how we see reality if there is that coherence coming together like a laser. And so when Stephen spoke earlier about the law of correspondence, there isn't this almost infinitied relationship to what we're capable of doing if we really are targeted in that love and consciousness all together, all at once, like moving like one flock of birds, right? Or one school of fish. So the level and the quality of unity, but also what are we doing with the math and the music, the numbers, the shape, the spin? Like, what do we actually want to occur with the directional arrow in the pointing of our hearts and our eyes toward one unified goal? And so as participants come together, this is a really cool way to get some scientific data on the power of the human heart.
And so far, we haven't actually talked about the actual meditation event on August 12th and your vision of documenting it. And you were talking about cymatics. For those who are not familiar with the term, cymatics is the science of making sound visible. Can you talk a little bit about the event itself and what you have planned and how you want to involve cymatics and sound and music and meditation and scientific research to bring it all together into one coherent event and journey and documentation?
Yeah, so I'll let Stephen speak to this too, because we sort of lovingly have a joke that we are here to serve the Earth's prana, but helping humans is our side gig. So we have basically this opportunity to focus on one thing, but we're really multitasking. And so on the day of, as we prepare for the eclipse, there will be we're really inviting, so many different hearts and minds to come together in their zone of genius and speak. I think you'll be leading kind of like a kickoff event to that global meditation, Michael. So as we move through these 8 weeks, we're getting just a lot of education on sea level rise and on oceans and unified field theory, on music, on the impact of your own emotional intelligence and how you see yourself in the world. So we're sort of doing all of that preparation work. But then the day of, Stephen and myself and a small team will actually be in the sky above the North Pole to do multiple things. We're multitasking as we do the live feed meditation as well. We are capturing the eclipse and capturing the electromagnetic anomaly, the shape of sound, the energy coming off of that nodal point of the Earth. And as we're just there to facilitate the power of everyone meditating together, it's like we're pointing the direction of everyone equally in laterality, seeing something beautiful for the world. But we're there to also capture that. We're going to capture light, sound, the shape of sound, fractal film data, so audio and visual information. And then what happens to be the happy side effect that helps humans. And so if you're a part of the GoFundMe campaign and the event itself, you'll also receive back some technology that is essentially put together to reset the vagus nerve, to assist in basically helping with nervous system dysregulation, coming back into resonance. So again, rather than looking at what's broken or what's not working, with our human mind and human thought and our humanness, we're really allowing these technologies to be gifted back to the world, so that you're just using that moment of resonance and love to, in an infinitied relationship, to come back into the human body and create some nervous system regulation. And rather than even calling it a nervous system, which maybe Stephen can speak to this, really, because the word nerve makes us feel nervous, right? To really just look at that system as an electrical system that is receiving that hug that we gave the earth. It's just coming right back to us in an infinitied relationship, where our electrical system can also have a rebirth or a reboot or a resonance by choice each time we want to listen to that sound file. So we're really creating basically some living technologies, and our partners with the Immortal Chamber, which Stephen is a visionary and a part of, and our dear friend Brian Leggett. The Immortal Chamber is basically a chamber that you can actually put your body into to create resonance in many, many different ways, many technologies coming all together. So this North Pole file that we create will actually live online, and it will live for our participants, and it's sort of just a beautiful gift that we're giving back to the world by the end of this event. And Stephen, say all of that in a more beautiful Stephen way.
I'm going to go with what she said. No, I'm trying to feel if there's anything relevant to add. Just, what's come to me to remind all humans is this very law of mentalism in the Hermetics. All things come from the mind. And so I always remind people, we can't create a new world using the same spells. And so we do really get to update our language. And what I found is that a lot of common language is designed to paint a subconscious picture of conflict and war. And there's a tremendous opportunity for all humans to be aware of sort of what's the common language that comes out of our mouths, and the picture that paints in our subconscious mind. I think that's a huge aspect of all of our efforts and sort of abilities to create a new future.
And Stephen, what you do with language is so profound. I think it's your superhero power, but can you give us some examples of that? Because all
Sure.
the ways in which you help reframe help people so much. So even hearing this message from you today could really reframe their perceptive abilities.
Yeah, I mean, you've already touched upon the change from nervous system, right? Whenever we call the nervous system, we embed the vibration of nervous into our electrical system. And so I just call it the electrical system. And if you think about some common words that people say, right? I'm dead tired, I'm triggered, let's capture that data, you're fired. And it can go on and on. Most of those images, if we were to draw them out, it would paint a picture of war and conflict, right? And we know that our subconscious mind has much higher computing power than our thinking, frontal brain. Yeah, I think there's a tremendous opportunity for all of us to be aware of the program that we exist in, so that we can exit the program of this common language of war and conflict.
See what I mean when Stephen says it in the Stephen way?
I find it really interesting, because I get myself, or I become more and more conscious around the words that I'm using, because I know how important and essential and powerful words can be. And one of the prime examples is, even when I get up and I send I don't even want to use the word right now, when I text somebody and address it good morning, it is like, well, what it really means is have fun morning. And I'm like, how are we sending each other messages first thing to start the day in morning? And what are those words? And would be interesting for somebody to make a thesaurus or a dictionary around it, That would be awesome.
I did create a PDF identifying all the words of war and the replacements. I'd be more than happy to share it out somehow. So
I'm going to draw just because it ties to this event, I'm going to bring more Stephen magic to it. But he sometimes will break down the word trigger because we're moving through this space and culture where we're talking so much about healing as if, and maybe Stephen, you can, well, let me say this one piece and then talk about the word triggered is literally like how you shoot someone or get shot. Like that's the idea of like, I'm taking a moment where there actually could be an up leveling, right? So an upgrade to self, I'm taking a triggering moment, which is just the law of dissipative structures or the law of perturbation, where when you go to the gym to build muscle, you're tearing down the muscle to get stronger. So we don't say the gym is triggering me, the weights are triggering me, this is so bad for me, right? We sort of embrace it because we chose to do it. But every time we have a trigger, we're having this opportunity of contrast and reflection to become a more evolved aspect of self or a more evolved version of self. We're getting perception and perspective upgrade to update, upgrade, upgrace ourselves. And so Stephen has this beautiful way in which he talks about, maybe you can throw into the mix, the greatest sort of mind virus that you think most of us are dealing with in terms of humanity right now, the greatest challenge to humanity.
Sure. Well, I look at it as it's the one pervasive program that is the root cause of all suffering, disease, conflict, separation, you name it. And the one unified program that an illusion that we live in is you're not there yet, right? Every marketing message says you're missing something and you're not there yet until you buy our product or service. And so we live with this illusion of there's somewhere to go versus just like being fully present and being fully aware of what is. And so yeah, I know a lot of that language. I love Dr. Larry's book, The Science of Creating Miracles. You have a great term to use instead of trigger. What's the term, Dr. Larry, that you use?
A murmur moment, and I could
Moment.
about the neurophysiology of that.
Yeah, and so there's just tremendous opportunity for all of us to start to really listen to our internal dialogue and our spoken language, and just take stock as like, what's the metaphorical picture that things that are coming out of my mouth and things that are happening in here, what is that picture? Because that picture is basically dictating your life. And so in this like the super simple way to start to make changes, these tiny new spells that you can incorporate into your life can make massive changes downstream.
I would like
event, yeah, Larry, the event in the North Pole is a murmur moment. So can you teach us about it?
Mm-hmm.
Sure. All right, going back to when we talked about the fundamentals of quantum physics, I want to talk a little bit about the fundamentals of neurophysiology, neuroscience. So how does the brain learn and evolve? You're 2 years old. You're crawling around on the floor. You touch the floor, you touch the wall, you touch the table leg. Not much happens. There's not really any interesting information there. You touch the hot stove, and now that really gets your attention. What happens is you now are in a situation where you've got some information coming in that is important for you to incorporate into your internal vision of the reality of the universe and of yourself. So you have an aha experience. Now, when you have this aha experience, there is a corresponding neurophysiological phenomenon that takes place in the brain waves, which what can be measured from the brain waves, the electrical brain activity, and there were electrical. It's called a memory and encoding related multifaceted electroencephalographic response, or MER, a murmur. And these murmur moments open your brain up for reprogramming. Okay, now something important's going on. Now I can create a shift. So every time we're triggered by something, if we want to use that negative term, which we don't, every time something comes along that really gets our attention, that gives us an aha moment, we have this opportunity. When we have a murmur moment or an aha moment, we have this opportunity to reprogram the brain, to create something new, to create an enhanced, more enlightened vision because the brain is opened up for reprogramming by these aha moments. So instead of being upset when something comes along that really gets our attention, we can take advantage of the aha moment to tune into who we truly are, that resonance where everything is perfect. Someplace we have to go, something we have to get, where we're already 100% valuable, 100% powerful, 100% self, the true self. Take advantage of these aha moments to tune into reality, and we shift our awareness and we shift the functioning of our nervous system.
Wow, that's I want to be careful with my words now, even more though. That becomes really, really potent, because when we're a 2-year-old touching the stove, we have no idea what is going to happen. And so we're doing this unconsciously. Now with this eclipse coming up, we have an opportunity to actually consciously step into an experience that we all don't know what this is going to be, but we can give it an opportunity. We can give it a try, for the greater good of all of life and for ourselves. And it's like you said early on, it's give to give, not give to get. And so how can we all give to one another and Mother Earth for perhaps 1 minute and 44 seconds out of our lifetime that we spent here on the planet to co-create the possibility of greater harmony on the planet. And so that's really why I'm just so fascinated by your engagement and your project and bringing this wisdom and knowledge and science out to the world, because I feel I understand what this opportunity really is for all of us. And what a tremendous project. Thank you.
Yeah. And I say one thing that brings it all back to the heart and back to the core. So when Dr. Larry is talking about, when we quiet ourselves and we go into the core, if you think about what's actually happening with this eclipse, why is this such a unique opportunity for all of us, is that when you look at the torus around the Earth and you look at the polarity between the North and South Pole, we literally get to be in the opportunity to come to the midline and to come into the dural tube and to come into the powerful center or the eye of the storm. And in that silence, that presence, that stillness, completely create an ending to one thing and the beginning of another, or create a complete reset of consciousness, of world, of mind, of oneness. And so what I have noticed with other eclipses, if I could just describe as someone who chases them all over the world and walks hundreds of miles in pilgrimage to go to nodal points at certain times to really get to watch the phenomenon of how wildly beautifully well ordered and organized the world is that at every eclipse, there's a really fascinating thing that happens where the electrical current gets so big that your whole body gets electrified, and suddenly darkness happens in the middle of the day, which the mind gets murmured by and says, why should there be darkness right now? Uh-oh, hot stove, right? And as that darkness comes, there is something I can only describe as this great hush. And there's a different kind of silence, and it's like this pregnant pause and this hush that comes over where anything feels possible, and even the animals feel it and the birds go quiet, and there's a whole wild reset that's happening. And in that pregnant pause and that hush, it's the same description that people have when they maybe do psychedelics and it's the first time that they ever feel a part of something bigger than them, or they go out. Well, no intelligence is worth anything without embodiment, so we want people to go out and have big experience and bring it in and be the best version of themselves that they can be. And so there's a really fascinating way that language around eclipses happens, where all of my friends, when we're trying to talk about the experience afterwards, will say, wow, when the darkness hit, I felt so small. And I realized that the earth is so big and the cosmos is so big and we're so little, and these are really powerful things. So I feel really, really small. At the same moment, we feel a part of something bigger than us because there's such an alignment happening. And so we go into the small and the tall and the all, and this really cool trinity where we're like super, super tiny and I'm no one and I don't matter, or I'm a part of everything, or I'm one molecule in this unified field. And there's just an everythingness that happens right in that pregnant moment. And if a lot of us lived like that, feeling so unified that there's nothing to prove and there's no small or tall and there's no vacillation and contrast between inferiority or superiority, and we really go into interiority and we go inside, we reboot something and we become a part of something bigger. And when we unify, that's really what Dr. Larry talks about with, well, then we become a technology and we're pointing our consciousness and our love like an arrow, and we become laser-like in the mission. And so when we look at the beauty of this possible moment, I think it's that shot at being a part of everything.
Wow, I'm mesmerized by the way you explained it, and also by the possibility. Do you want to add something to that, Dr. Larry or Dr. Stephen?
I think that was perfect.
Yeah.
Go team.
Go team. Before we come to an end, can we Mickaela, can you talk a little bit about the 7 other episodes that are going to be coming up? Just as a highlight, I know we have some incredible people joining us, but just to give a little bit of an overview of what people can expect, and would you be able to
Yeah, of course.
do that?
So by no means will this be the only voices in all of this unified magic and collaboration. It really is like getting the band back together. It's an experiment and a collaboration in human endeavor with Earth biophotonics and Earth metrics and Earth magic. So there are lots of partnerships, but in these 8 episodes, what I was trying to arc out as a form of kind of like being emotional athletes and consciousness musicians and artivists, and the word artivist to me just means earth like activists, but instead of trying to like I'm an activist and I'm fighting against something, I like this word that's more about being with something. So like all of us are bringing our art, and so in these 8 episodes we get to talk to basically specialists in creating earth technologies that help us really have our organs all function in terms of regenerative health in a much richer way, and that becomes about stabilization of the electrical system most of the time, creating more voltage, more life, more energy, right? We're going to talk to scientists, to artists, to musicians, doing a lot of sound technology. We're going to talk to sea level rise experts, to folks who are really looking at global economics and global politics and the food supply, and teaching us about agriculture and teaching us about, what will be the impact of sea level rise, how the ocean is linked to consciousness itself, which we still didn't get to hear from Dr. Larry about. And in terms of the unified field of consciousness, it is an ocean, right? It is a sea of humans. And I love the way he speaks about that. And then we'll really get to talk to some elders, Inuit elders, and Stephen has worked in so many alliances, which he can speak to, of, tribes around the world, the Hopi, the Zuni, the Kogi, we have similar petroglyphs, we have similar hieroglyphs all around the world. We've got these symbols of, different ages and times, and we've got these, not necessarily warnings, but just these long calendar data sets that are showing us that we're moving through a really potent cycle. And so hearing from, earth keepers who've really kept the long calendar alive in their lineage, in their bloodstream, in their consciousness, in their shared living oral traditions and storytelling. So we're bringing all of those voices together, but really we're also training like athletes to understand what we want to point our consciousness to. Like we're pointing the arrow of time really to a timeline reset if we choose it for ourselves.
Wonderful. Is there anything you want to add, Dr. Larry or Dr. Stephen?
I'm delighted to be able to connect with all of you here, and then we'll be doing this again in the future. It's really, I think that all of you have exemplified the kind of love and harmony and resonance in this experience that we've just had in the last hour or so today. That is what we're all about for creating for the world. So thank you.
Stephen, anything you want to add just about a lot of maybe prophecies or information or wisdom that's coming from different lineages around the world to these pivotal times?
Yeah, I could share a little bit about. And so in December of 23, I was on a pilgrimage with the Kogi, the indigenous peoples in Colombia, and with some of their mamos. We were going to these 8 sacred sites that they've been going to for thousands of years to make energetic payments to Mother Earth to offset the fact that Westerners had been extracting, from Mother Earth. And so in December of 23 is when they sort of shared their prophecy with us, which is we have a short amount of time for humanity to really come together to shift away from this extractive utilization sort of relationship with each other and with Mother Earth to one of like sacred reciprocity, wholeness, and love and coherence. They said that if we don't do this, Mother Earth will take it upon herself to reset herself. I always laugh when people say we need to save Mother Earth. Like Mother Earth doesn't need saving; it's going to be fine. Why wouldn't be concerned about humans? And so, if you want to play the game of duality, and so according to their sort of communication with Mother Earth, basically Mother Earth's like, hey, in 15 years, unless you all make the changes, I'll just make the change. The drawback is when Mother Earth makes a change, the language the Kogi used was human extinction in 15 years. Now, whenever I share the story, I always follow it up with, I have an absolute knowing that we'll make it. It's just becomes this greatest opportunity, not from a fear we don't want to die thing, but from okay, they're giving us a really good reason to really come together and create this utopic future that I am 1,000% certain that we will create.
And there's also a really beautiful kind of one-liner that the Kogi left with Stephen. Can you talk about being already ready?
Yeah, there was a video that was shot a couple of years ago, the message from the mother, from the Kogis, and it was an eye-opening message or a stark warning to humanity, if I can say it that way. And then on the contrary, almost all traditions of those who came before us have seen something different. They've seen Nirvana, Shambhala, Golden Age, Heaven on Earth. So they've seen that it is going to come true. And I think it depends on each and one of us whether we're going to what I would want to call align our baseline consciousness to a timeline in which those prophecies are going to be able to come true. And the event on August the 12th for 1 minute and 44 seconds, I believe, is one of those rare moments in history where we truly have an opportunity, and to recognize that significance and to be part of this with you in coherence and harmony and love, and is what an honor it is to be alive, and what an honor it is to be working and collaborating and cooperating with you. So I just wanted to say thank you from the deepest level of my heart, really, for what you're doing and how you show up, and your lived soul's purpose coming to its fullest expression, if I can judge it that way.
That's so sweet, and I'm going to come back to that sentence I was hoping Stephen would jump in and say, but this idea that when we think, what am I supposed to do, or I'm so small, or I don't know what we're doing, and I don't know if I'm good at this, the Kogi kind of said to him that all of us are already ready, like we're already ready to come into coherence. And so we're doing this meditation on April 12th all together, and there's nothing you need to bring but your heart. And it actually will be an hour, so the totality is a minute and 44 seconds of its potency, but we'll really be cohering with each other for an hour to prepare for that, transit moment of big, big miracle. And we're already ready to create big miracle. So, but maybe, Stephen, you should say it with your voice. Tell us we're already ready and we'll believe you.
Yeah, it was interesting when the Kogi were sharing their prophecy, they did say a phrase which was super powerful. That the phrase was verbally, "We have no enemies." And when they spoke those words, they telepathically communicated, everyone is already, and already. And at the same time, they communicated that there's a wave coming. Humans get to ride the wave, and it's moving faster than what humans can imagine. And we get to ride the wave as long as we pull up our anchors. And so I interpret that as like change is happening. We may not be the only force creating this change. We get to ride it as long as we pull up our stories of what is real, what is reality. Definitely our everyday physical reality is definitely not the totality of reality. So
already. Wow.
Yeah, and then backwards as well. It took me a day to unpack the codes of that. So.
Awesome.
All three of you have referenced the reality of what is actually going on a macro scale. There is a huge uprising of consciousness taking place this time. And as you approach the conscious unified field, anything that is out of tune with nature, out of tune with the conscious unified field, starts to be thrown out. It's like if you're fasting, you feel all this purity and all that, and then there's some things that don't feel so wonderful sometimes. Well, that's the impurities being thrown out. You sweep the dust out of your room, you kick up some dust. So all the horrible stuff in the world, that's actually, as Stephen will be fond of saying, that's part of the process too. The disresonances are being thrown out, as what's really happening is that resonance, harmony, unified consciousness, all of us functioning in what Mickaela would call murmuration, all of us attuning to the same resonance of harmony and love together. That's what's really happening. And the things that aren't in tune with that, you see them popping out and disappearing. It's like you watch a movie, and you know the heroes of the movie, and you know what kind of a movie it is, and you know there are all kinds of cliffhangers, but you know in the end it's all going to work out. We all can have that quiet feeling on the level of our hearts. What's really happening is a rise in level of consciousness. And yeah, there are a lot of cliffhangers, and it appears very, very on the edge. And yet, what is due to the rise of consciousness that's really the real phenomenon that's taking place. We all get to participate in riding this wave, and we can have fun doing it without being afraid, oh gosh, things might not turn out. Things are turning out. The consciousness of the human race, the consciousness of nature is rising, and that's the real phenomenon. And all of you have referenced that. And I think the ancient teachings have referenced that as well.
Thank you, Dr. Larry, for scientifically confirming that and allowing me personally to step into a deeper level of trust when it comes to that. And if science can confirm it, what we're all feeling in our hearts and what we're all dreaming, then all I can say is hallelujah. And is there anything anybody wants to add before we come to a close for this week? And I just want to say thank you to everybody who has has watched this episode, please join us again for the next 7 episodes. The links of how you can get involved, whether as a supporter or as a participant or as a what was the third thing?
Amplifier.
An amplifier. The links are either above or below, or maybe both, as above, so below, and so I just wanted to really thank everybody for their time and their presence, and I want to thank you, Mickaela, and Dr. Larry and Dr. Stephen for spending this time with me, and again, for your dedication and for your work and how you show up on the planet in your full capacity. And with that, I am ready to play a play-out video. If there is anything you want to share, please go ahead.
We just want to thank you for being our glue, and also for your love and your work in the world, and being such a bright soul and a bright light. Super excited to start the journey with you.
Here we go.